there, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It is episode number 120. Today, we're trying to bring the energy for what was, I think, a not that fun game yesterday as Inter Miami drew the Chicago Fire 0-0 at Soldier Field. Messi does make his first trip to the Windy City, but he doesn't come away with 3 points. Today, I am joined again by guest host Marc Gonzalez of the False Nine podcast to break this game down, talk about what went right, what went wrong, why the Herons weren't able to break through against a Chicago team that is not by any means a world beater. And then, of course, we'll give out some awards. But before all of that, I'm your host, Scotty. As I mentioned, I'm here with my guest hosts. Marc, how are you feeling today, my man?
Doing good, man. A little bummed out about the result, but we'll dive into that very shortly.
Yeah, I like to start off by discussing some of the goings and happenings around Inter Miami, but it's been a little quiet on that front over the course of the weekend. The biggest news that we got, and we talked about it on Friday, was Baltasar Rodriguez being ready to go. He doesn't end up making the trip to Chicago alongside other key players like Robert Taylor, Julian Gressel, Santi Morales, Leo Alfonso, guys that have been on the roster a lot this season. And so not a shock that he didn't make it, but disappointing we get a chance to lay eyes on him. We're going to have to wait for that a little bit longer. But I do think this is, and maybe we could spend a few minutes on it, is the end of the transfer window for Inter Miami, especially in terms of incomings. And so since we don't have a ton to talk about early on, and that game wasn't that interesting, we'll have to, expound on a couple other topics to get this to the normal length. How are you feeling about this roster? How are you feeling about the transfer window, the guys we brought in, the depth and the quality of what we have at present?
At present, I think it's hands down the deepest team in the MLS. We brought in some quality pieces to help, especially the back line. In that we brought in Maxi Falcon, and then we brought in Telasco Segovia and Allende to help, with wing play and central midfield play. And they've produced early on. They've had some bumps in the road, but I like what I'm seeing depth-wise from this team. There's a lot in that midfield area from Namaski to Busquets with Redondo, Bright, Segovia, as I mentioned. We brought in Baltasar Rodriguez, and we still have David Ruiz, who is injured, who is another rotational piece. So the abundance of players in certain areas is key to succeeding in a long season. And that depth and rotation is going to be key going forward.
Well, it hasn't been key to date, but I guess we will get into that. What else is on your mind, though, for this team? Because we are getting our first week off in quite some time. They have 6 days to prepare for this road trip to Cleveland, I guess, where they will play the Columbus Crew, and then they got the big game in the midweek against Vancouver, and then the following week. So it's a pretty big, important stretch for Inter Miami. Obviously, the Columbus Crew and Inter Miami, the last 2 undefeated teams in MLS. So 3 of the next 4 games are going to be very big. How are you feeling about everything? Is there anything you're worried about? Is there anything you're noticing that's not specifically related to this game that is of a concern to you?
Maybe.
Or exciting you?
I'm excited for that matchup, excuse me, against Columbus, specifically because they acquired Daniel Gazdag. Now they pair him with Diego Rossi and the plethora of players they have on that team. They've always been a team to really play us to the best of their ability. Tough place to play over there at Columbus. Really looking forward to how they defend us. If they sit in a low block, how we go attack them. Is it going to be the sort of repetitive try to force it down the middle, or are we going to open up the game and choose the correct personnel to apply that play style that we need to beat these teams with a compact low block against us?
Yeah, well, I don't think that's what we're going to see against either the Columbus Crew or Vancouver. So, this team will have a chance to really play some ball against some good teams. And it'll be interesting to see where Miami stacks up. Okay, let's get into it because, again, there's not much to talk about, and maybe we can get through this game relatively quickly and save everyone some time because this was not the most fun game. I did rewatch it. Not fun on the rewatch either. I can assure you of that. I think there was good 10 minutes in the beginning of the game, a fun 10 minutes at the end of the game, and a lot of really slow, lethargic play in the 70 minutes in the middle. Not a lot of stoppage time to get excited for either. Normally at this point, I would do a rundown, but I figured my rundown should be equal of the game and sort of represent what that game was. So I will just quickly say that Chicago had some opportunities. Ustari made some saves. Miami had a few opportunities. Chris Brady made some saves. Ultimately, Joe Bamba had an opportunity in the 90th minute to get the win, and Oscar Ustari makes a save. Messi immediately turns it right around and gives Allende an opportunity in the box, but he pulls it wide, and the game ends 0-0. And not much happened in the middle. So we will talk about why nothing happened, but I think that was a pretty good rundown of the key moments of this game. Not a lot to be excited about, and certainly most of everything that happened would be a simple footnote if it had happened last Wednesday night.
I agree. It was short, concise with that rundown. Not a lot of energy, kind of what Inter Miami showed in that game for most of it. It was just for me, it was a stale game, stale offensive game for us. Nothing going forward. Really, really a step behind, I feel, on certain parts, but overall, it was a rotation game. I felt like something needed to be rotated in the starting 11. Unfortunately, it wasn't, and I think we can touch up on that soon.
Yeah, I was looking for the key moments that we could spend more time on. There was a goal scored by Luis Suárez in the 86th minute that gets called off sides. I know during the game they didn't show a great replay of it because what they did show, they didn't time it right, so he had already kicked the ball. I went back and really slowed it down and pieced it back to where Messi kicks the ball. And I do think Suárez is half a step offside. It's pretty close, but nothing that is egregious. I think that was the right call. And that was really it. I mean, there was some nice moments by individual players, and I'm sure we will mention them when we get to awards, but most of the excitement and action really came from Chicago going the other way, and they had a number of clear-cut opportunities that they couldn't convert on, which felt like it was the sort of natural course of this game, a few turnovers in the midfield that got them going, but ultimately Inter Miami was genuinely in a good position to stop them, and they did for 93 minutes, including stoppage time.
Yeah. I think most of Chicago's attack came off when they beat our press. We would take them deep, stick them in a corner, then Tehran or Gutman would find Pineda or Gutierrez in the middle, and then they spray the ball out wide to Zinkernago or Bamba, and they're off to the races. They really were able to pinpoint the weak part in our press that game, and we were a step behind. We weren't on the backs of certain players. We let them play deep. We let them play out quickly, and I felt we were just a step behind that's the mantra for that game. I think we were a step behind. We had tired legs, and we weren't getting to the spaces to cover it.
Yeah, let's start there because I think there was two noticeable things about this game. One, that was a team ripe to be pressed high and to create high turnovers. And Inter Miami has done a great job of that over the last year and a half and created plenty of offense and goals from it. And that included in this game, I thought, they had a number of opportunities where they forced a quick turnover, whether it was Kramaski or Busquets. They got the ball into or around the edge of the 18-yard box, but instead of converting those for goals, it was just a little bit slow here or an indecisiveness here that caused us to not be able to convert on those opportunities. And then on the occasions where we weren't able to press effectively enough, and I think that was partially because of the personnel, they were able to play through or over us, and that's when they got the majority of their opportunities, as you mentioned. Inter Miami's press is, I think, something that last year was okay, and especially when Suárez wasn't starting and Campana was out there and Diego Gomez was on the front line, it became something of a weapon. We saw in that middle portion of last season during the Copa America that they executed it pretty well, and even beyond that, for 20 minutes or so, they would start the game, and they came out with a lot of early goals. Matías Rojas was a menace in those situations. It's not been there this year, and this felt like a game where it could have made a huge difference. This is a team that's been rotating a lot of players in the back line because of health. They haven't had a consistent midfield all season, and so the real weapons are that front three. And so if you could just press a little, and by the way, they're also coached by a system coach who wants them to play out of the back. So they aren't going to just kick it long to avoid turnovers. They're going to try and improve and play out of the back. And so there was an opportunity to create more high turnovers. Now, I want to be clear. They did that some, and probably enough on another day, or if this was last year, to create a couple goals from it. Kremaski had a nice one in the 5th minute, or 4th minute rather, that he drops off to Messi, and Messi fires, and it's a nice save by Chris Brady to get the game started. There was a moment in the 67th minute where Busquets forces a high turnover. So there were opportunities, but it wasn't consistent, and I think that was a breakdown in our press. And then also we didn't convert in the way that we've done in the past.
Yeah, there were plenty of there were opportunities there, as you said. When I look at the press, I look at when it's triggered. And when we trigger the press on certain center backs who have the ball, we like to pin them deep towards the corner flag. I felt this game, Segovia specifically, I want to say Segovia's side was a step late to that, to the wing back position, or to that right back position for them, and they were able to play out through there, play to the middle to Gutierrez, and play out wide. This may be a tired leg situation where we want to engage that press, but if we don't rotate properly and don't have those fresh legs to go chase the ball, we're not going to be able to get it done. We're going to get beat over the top.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something, and I agree with you about Telasco Segovia. He was not consistent in the press, in the press, and I think that's becoming a little bit of a weakness for Inter Miami. We noticed last year with Diego Gomez that was a consistently reliable part of his game, was to be able to get it out at that back line and create turnovers, or at least make it difficult for them to create clean offense. For this year, you replace Diego Gomez with Telasco Segovia, and Segovia has his own nice talents. That is not as easy to do because he's just not quite that player. And while Marc gets himself figured out and hopefully comes back, I just want to continue that thought, because he is he's supposed to be a starter for this team on that left wing. He's supposed to be the guy that can replace Diego Gomez. And we've seen when he gets on the ball, he has a tremendous amount of quality, and you can see when he's a 10, he's absolutely doing what you want from him. But in the meantime, and part of a holistic game plan, it is tough when now 3 of your front 3 players aren't particularly good pressers. I don't know what you heard or lost from that, but welcome back, Marc.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
that. So aside from the front 3, you have other concerns about the press?
The midfield. If we're going to press, we need to have running. We need to have the ability to cover space in the midfield, and specifically with Yannick Bright, I think our press is the best, because he's able to close in the gaps, close in the distance between the ball and the marked player in the midfield, and really create those turnovers and win the ball. Unlike Redondo, who's a step slower, who when playing the 6 role is in between of stepping and covering the space behind them. So that's another personnel thing I would say that the midfield is concerned about when the press is engaged against a team that like Chicago with our starting 11.
Yeah, I agree. And against a team where this was a focal point, and I do think this was Inter Miami's game plan, was to go win the ball high. Is probably why you see Kremaski in the starting lineup. But again, you got to make your personnel fit your game plan. And Inter Miami has so much talent, so many quality players, that there are options out there to help you do whatever it is you want to do, and they have quality in those different aspects. So if you want to press high, go put a Fafa Picault out there. You don't need to have Telasco Segovia for his ball handling when your goal is to win the ball high, including with that intense press that we haven't seen particularly well. So I agree with you. I think this is a area of concern for Inter Miami, and something that is solvable with different personnel. But as we've seen with Javier Mascherano all season, he has been reluctant to rotate a couple of his key players, and those very key players are the ones that are going to struggle to maintain a high press consistently throughout a game, and not even consistent, even for small moments, to be able to do it incredibly effectively is going to be a real challenge, because they just aren't those types of athletes or those types of, in that type of condition to go out there and do that. And so something to consider moving forward. I think that was a big part of why this team wasn't able to successfully create a ton of offense, especially for the first 60 minutes. The other thing that was so clear to me during the game was that we weren't creating enough width with our offense. And I touched on this yesterday, but it became even more clear on the rewatch. They did almost nothing down the left and right flank outside of a few balls to Noah Allen, who, while I appreciate, is a significant downgrade in that one regard from, well, in plenty of regards from Jordi Alba, but they weren't creating anything down the right side. Telasco Segovia wasn't creating anything down the left. This to me was the biggest issue. And so when you don't have a ton of options or outlets in the front of your attack, you kind of funnel everything centrally to the one player who does consistently get open. And as we're seeing in the chat, Inter Miami did spend a ton of time trying to force feed the ball into Messi or find angles so that they could get it back to Messi. I don't even think they did a good job of getting the ball to Messi in the first half. They were better in the second half, but this was, I think, the big disappointment from the personnel, not just pressing and following a defensive game plan that probably would have worked if you had different personnel, but also creating enough width so that your offense was able to facilitate your best players being your best players.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it goes to that width conversation. That right side was basically Gramaski and just Messi, and Kremaski wasn't making any overlapping runs in behind. And you have Gonzalo Lujan, who is specifically instructed to stay back and track Jonathan Bamba. And he's not going to push forward because he lacks the athleticness, the athletic ability to track back. And with the speed that they have, they can hit on the counter very easily. And it's not the game plan that Mascherano has instructed with Lujan in the lineup to overlap, to make that run. So that's where the personnel change comes in. You put an Ian Frey out there. You put Allende out there instead of Kremaski. Wide players, get players in behind, get balls in into the box from wide spaces. It drags out defenders and it opens up spaces in the middle, sort of like we saw against LAFC when Allende tucked in to the middle. Messi was able to play out a little wider. Kremaski also played outside on the right, and LAFC had a little trouble and there was a little chaotic for a moment there with balls being whipped in. Against this team, Chicago, who really didn't respect us going wide, they just compacted everything towards the middle. We tried to funnel it to Messi. And as you said, the left side really didn't show anything either, as Segovia was playing too wide for my liking. He's an 8, just like Kremaski. There are 2 central midfielders playing wide. There's not a lot of space between them. The runs in behind aren't going to be there like with a Fafa Picot or a Robbie Taylor, who wasn't available, and Allende. So the personnel change, or the personnel needs to be correct on the field in order for us to get that width, in order for us to play through Messi in the middle and then out wide into the middle.
Yeah, I want to get back to that point in a few minutes because I do think there's a real depth of things to digest there. But I want to go back to sort of the game state. Let's talk about the defense for a little bit because they did feel under pressure, but I also sensed a real calm and confidence from them for most of the game, despite the fact that they had to do a lot of one-on-one and transition defending. This is something I did want to mention because that has not always been the case with this team. It has often felt like when they get beat for pace, they are in a real trouble and basically saying, Drake, make something special happen or we're going to give up a goal. That no longer feels to be the case, despite the fact that we are in a slightly rotated back line. Lujan, not one of our top 4. Avila's not one of our top 4 at the moment. So having 2 different names and 3 different sort of players on the back line, if you're moving Noah Allen to left back out of where he's been the star at center back, that's 3 out of 4 changes, and this team is still able to relatively comfortably, I think, handle opposition going the other way. And it wasn't like they were perfect every time, but there was a composure and calmness to it that I noticed and felt good to me. And I wanted to give them credit for that because that has not been the case for a long time for Inter Miami.
No, that you're right on that. It used to be they're turning their heads, running the other way, and making a silly tackle, the wrong read on a pass, and it leads into a one-on-one. There's been a very good improvement, very drastic improvement in that backline shape, specifically in transition. And I think there's like you said, there's a calming factor back there. I think that goes with Maxi Falcon and being sort of that leader in that back line. And, having Toto Aviles, the young guy, really looking onto Falcon and seeing how he defends, the way he is positioned, and not needing to go to ground so often and just standing up a defender. Because Avila's pound for pound has the as good as a physical tools as Falcon, or if not better. He's got probably
Way
the
better.
pace on him.
Yeah.
He has the height. Huh?
Better, yeah.
Hello? Oh yeah, he's better physically with the tools. Um, he's just his head. If he keeps a stable head, he can be a really really good center back in this league. And I think that transcends into the calming effect that Falcon brings and the improvement of Noah Allen. And you're able to have that with a rotated Lujan in the lineup.
Yeah, and I also want to give Noah Allen credit because it's not just Maxi Falcon. I think Noah Allen has also been really composed in the back, especially under pressure. So
Yeah.
I think it's a two-way street, and then obviously when Jordi Alba's in the field, him as well. So I think it's multifaceted, but I did want to give them credit for that in a game where we're not going to give a ton of credit to a lot of players. I did want to mention that. Obviously, Oscar Ustari played great, and I'm sure we will talk about him when we get to awards. But then we go forward a step to the midfield, and this was Redondo Busquets for much of this game. And I again wanted to give them a little bit of credit because we were put under defensive pressure from transitions relatively frequently. And as I just mentioned, it never felt panic. And one of my biggest concerns when we switched to this 4-2-3-1 system where we were going to have two people in the midfield was that we weren't going to be strong in defensive transitions. That was going to be, I thought, the one weakness, and all of the great things that it helped or were brought by bringing Messi centrally and getting him on the ball more easily were going to be put under pressure by not having that third midfielder. I think they've held up really well. And even Busquets and Redondo, who I think is the midfield partnership we're the most nervy about. I think we all feel better when Yannick Bright's in there. Maybe Julian Gressel and Busquets, but from what we've seen this year, it's the most nervy pairing is Redondo and Busquets. And while I don't think either had a particularly phenomenal game in possession or going forward, I did think they contributed to helping this defense maintain a clean sheet and B, not the kind of chaos that we've seen in the past, even if, and it feels weird because Chicago did get their opportunities, but there was just a level of composure that I did appreciate and I wanted to give them credit for.
Yeah, I agree on that aspect of them being able to hold their own in that defensive transition midfield. I think I want to say that I counted multiple times or a handful of times that Redondo made a nice step up into the midfield and broke up a transition or won the ball back and was able to keep possession. And if it hadn't been for those, we wouldn't know what happened. They could have been on the break 4-on-3, 4-on-2. But Redondo stepped up a couple times in a position that he's very hesitant to pick and choose his spots, when to step up, when to hold back, when to play the ball forward. I think he did a fair job yesterday in that role.
Yeah, and Busquets also coming back from the suspension, not a surprise, but he did what he does. So then, to me, it really most of our problems came from that front four where we talked about not being able to consistently press and create turnovers, which was the game plan. And then obviously going forward, when you did get the ball, they weren't particularly clinical. I didn't think they created enough width. And so I think that is where the entire game falls apart for Inter Miami. Their back four, their midfield, their goalkeeper were actually solid, and I think did what they needed to do to get a win in this game. Most of the failures came from the front four. And I want to take Messi out of that because we know he's the conductor, but if everything around him is not working, it does become possible for the other team to sort of zero in on taking him out of the game and make sure he's not the guy that beats them. And that's what happened yesterday. I thought it was a solid performance from Kramaski on an individual basis, but when you input his style of play into everything that was happening with the 11, and then you put into Lasco Segovia, who I didn't think played particularly well, Luis Suarez, who I didn't think played particularly well, you get a 0-goal performance in what I think everyone can be disappointed with. Steve, and I think he says it really well, Mascherano was naive with the starting lineup. We're going to play Chicago again this year, and let's just assume it was going to be this upcoming week. What kind of changes would you want to see to address those particular issues? And let's assume we're not worrying about the Champions Cup or anything like that, just to win that one game. What would you like to see different?
Yeah, I would insert Fafa Picault as the left mid. I would insert Allende as the right mid, Ian Frey as your right back, and then and then have that width going down that right side with Frey overlapping. You have Yannick Bright who can track into space to cover any right-sided balls that come that way in the vacated spots that Ian Frey leaves as he's making a run forward or whipping in a ball. Then you have Fafa Picault who provides those runs in behind. The ability to get behind the defense allows Jordi Alba to play overlapping runs, allows Jordi Alba to have the freedom to tuck in a bit and play as almost another midfielder to be even more creative and to help Messi, to help Suárez in that creating more chances through the middle if a team's going to force us to play that way.
Yeah, you mentioned Ian Frey. I'm not sure why he didn't play yesterday, but I also think he's pretty good at being a part of the high press. So a lot of the things you just said are, I think, simple and obvious answers, but some of them are a factor if we've played a lot of games and he wanted to rotate a little bit. Obviously, Jordi Alba, Tadeo Allende, I think Yannick Bright fall into those categories. But then there's some other things that I think there are a little bit of a question mark of how Javier Mascherano views this team or the game or this league that is maybe a little bit different than what I think we would prognosticate as the right solution here. Ian Frey not starting at right back, hasn't played much lately since Cello weekend return. Gonzalo Lujan has gotten 2 90-minute sessions over the last week and a half, and I don't think played particularly well in either one. And then Telasco Segovia at this left mid position, and it's strange to me, not strange, but it's concerning to me that sometimes he's able to really have a huge impact in the game and he's clearly excellent on the ball, but when he's out wide on the left and it's not going, he can find himself disappearing from games. And if you're counting on him to be a big contributor, especially if you aren't expecting a guy like Kremasky to be a goal contributor, because you're not, even if you start him, and I thought he played fine yesterday, he's not a guy that's you're going to expect to score goals. He's probably got 5 goals in his career. And Suárez is out of shape or out of goal-scoring form. You need more from Segovia, and they weren't able to get that. And yet we haven't seen anything else from Segovia this year when Messi's on the field. So I'm not exactly sure what that solution looks like in Javier Mascherano's head.
Would you categorize that Segovia situation sort of like the Diego Gomez situation last year in terms of him playing out wide and not being to the full strength that he is as the best 8 in the league as he was last year?
I don't know, because I think Segovia's best position is as a number 10 that we've seen so far. I think he can play as a part of a double pivot. I think he can. I think he did that in Portugal, and he did that to an extent that got him this move to Inter Miami. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was good in that role, but we haven't seen it, and clearly it doesn't feel like Javier Mascherano sees him as a good fit for that spot. And so you're kind of shunted to that left midfield role, maybe on the right, where I would like to see him be given an opportunity, especially with a right back that overlaps and can be dangerous down the right side. But we haven't seen that either. So it's interesting because he clearly has talent, but exactly how he fits in feels like it depends on the opponent, it depends on the game state, it depends on the game style. And if he's going to disappear as frequently as he has over the last couple of weeks, you are at some point going to have to say, we need to try something else. But Javier Mascherano has been pretty stubborn with Segovia so far.
Yeah, I think Segovia's one of his best games this season was the Houston game, where he played as the 10 in Messi's absence, and he was able to press the ball with Suárez and Kremasky, and they created 2 turnovers and 2 goals off that. And I thought he was very creative in the way he was playing, finding the ball, taking on defenders, and like I said, engaging in that press and being a menace in that disruptive part of the pitch.
Yeah. As far as the Diego Gomez thing, it is weird, but I think this is Javier Mascherano finding a spot for Diego Gomez. I'm sorry, for Telasco Segovia. I thought last year was Tata Martino moving Diego Gomez so he could find a spot for Federico Redondo in the midfield. Yeah. And so that, to me, I do think creates a different dynamic when you are directly comparing Telasco Segovia versus a Fafa Picault or soon to be a Baltasar Rodriguez or, Robert Taylor or whoever else can play out there. I think that's a little bit of a different scenario when you're playing them out of position. Because, listen, I do think Telesco Segovia has more quality, especially on the ball, than a Fafa Picault, than a, insert name here, and we'll see what Baltasar looks like. But it, to me, feels slightly different. One of the things I did want to talk about, and Miami King just puts in the chat, so perfect timing. He says that Mascherano said in the press conference the players are tired with playing games every 3 or 4 days. And then he says, why didn't Javier Mascherano rotate? He's so confused. And this is exactly what I want to talk about next, because I too am confused on why that is a reasonable excuse for a coach that has the deepest team in the league, that has players that are clearly good enough to start and win MLS games, that he has either completely shunted off to the side in the case of a guy like Julian Gressel, or B, given very limited opportunities. And I'm thinking of guys like Robert Taylor, Ian Frey of late, David Martinez. There's plenty of guys on this roster that can help you win games, especially games like this when you need games off, you need days off. We would love to see more from Alan Obando, for example. We've seen Telesco Segovia come in and play an excellent number 10. So if you want to give Messi a couple minutes off, I think that's totally on the table for you, although I wouldn't make that diagnosis from this game. But everywhere else on the field, you have plenty of players to rotate, and you haven't been doing this. So I do think it's fair to look at that comment and say, that's an excuse from the coach when his team didn't play well, a team that he put out, an 11 that he put out that didn't really fit his game plan and had obvious flaws, especially in retrospect. And so I think Javier Mascherano has been great this year. I think he's done an excellent job, but certainly we should mention that.
Yeah, I thought I was confused as you in the chat were when he said that comment. You have, like you said, the deepest team in the league, and last year you had contributors from Leo Alfonso, David Ruiz, Julian Gressel contributed, Matias Rojas contributed. So rotation is going to be needed in a long season, and that's why you kind of built this roster the way you did, to supplement days off for certain players. Noah Allen can play a left back. Can he play it as good as Jordi Alba? No, but he can hold his own. Franco Negri did the same last year. You have a Alan Obando who has pace, who has the height, who gives a different dynamic in the offensive game, putting in balls from wide spaces and going up and get it, as opposed to trying to play through the middle. You have Alfonso who can stretch the field either on the left side or the right side. So I'm just not sure where that comment comes from. It's an excuse. I think he needs to be able to rotate certain games. I understand that if Suárez says I want to play, he's going to play him. If Messi says he wants to play, he's going to play him. But there comes a time where tired legs are going to take over, and it's being shown on some players. Segovia looked a step behind yesterday. There were times that Suárez, he plays a lot. He looks a step behind already. He's played every game 90 minutes, almost 90 minutes.
So I actually think it's interesting you noted those two players, because those are the two players specifically I wanted to talk about. Jordi Alba gets his rest yesterday, which I applaud, and I'm grateful he got the opportunity. And what do? You fill him in with Noah Allen, and you put on Toto Aviles, and you still have a very strong back line that can help keep a clean sheet. So it just goes to show that one player getting a little bit of a rest doesn't cause this team to fall apart in a dramatic fashion. The two players that I think are in desperate need of more rest and more rotation are Telesco Segovia and Luis Suárez. And let me be clear about something. There are some players that can just do it. Someone in the chat mentioned that, players on Premier League teams and playing in European competitions, they play 2 games every week for months on end. And I do think a professional athlete, a soccer player, should be able to play 3 out of 4 games in a 2-week span without any sort of problem. But these two players in particular, I think, have had a real struggle going game after game after game after game after game. Most of the rest of the team has gotten an opportunity here or there to rest, including even Oscar Ustari. But it does feel like every time he's available, Telesco Segovia starts. And Luis Suárez has started every game of the season. And I think he started 5 out of 6 preseason games, maybe all 6 preseason games. So he has played as much as anyone. I would imagine he leads the team in minutes played. Those two are not two that can play every single game and keep their high intensity. We saw last year Leo Campana, who was the backup to Luis Suárez, he had a double-digit goal scoring season. Maybe he finished with 9 goals, but either way, it just showed 1,500 minutes from him is huge to help Luis Suárez get off the field, get a different angle, and get an opportunity to see the game from a different way, get a game off every once in a while, and reset. I think he desperately needs that right now. And then same thing with Segovia, who is not a physical freak. You compared him to Diego Gomez, but they're obviously very different people. When you look at a guy like Kremaski, he's going to run his lungs out. That's not what Segovia is. He doesn't have that engine that just runs and runs and runs, and that's not a shot at him. It's just not who he is. And so that's a guy you need to take a little bit more care for. But that's, to me, the biggest flaw right now, and it's the thing I want them to take away most from this game is those two players, I think, need half a game off, 60 minutes off to sort of reset both physically and mentally, especially going into that Vancouver game. And I'm worried that Javier Mascherano is going to say this Columbus game means everything because it's the top of the Eastern Conference, even though it's so early in the season. And it could cost us going forward into Vancouver.
No, I agree. And I could tell, I can see it in, Segovia. He triggers a press on that left side, and he really goes for it because he's got some ground to make up for Suárez. And Suárez, for having those knees, and he's really running on the press too and tracking back at times. So the wear and tear is there. It's real. These guys need at least a game off or 60 minutes off and a 30-minute cameo in the next game. Rest and recover this week, and I really hope Mascherano, doesn't view this game against Columbus as a winner take all, because it's like you said, it's so early in the season that we need them for the long run.
Okay, I want to dive into one last bit of territory before we get to awards, and that's the question of how good this team is. And I want to play both sides of the table here because I have been as vocal, I think, as anyone that this is the best team in MLS history, both from a top-end talent and a depth of talent perspective. And so I think there's no reason they shouldn't accomplish everything they want to do. I think it makes perfect sense that they are both deep in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and also pushing at the top of the Eastern Conference table. But with that said, you get results like this where and this isn't an isolated incident. It's been 3 of the last 4 games. They go on the road to LAFC and look lethargic. They played last weekend against Toronto. They get a 1-1 draw where I think they probably should have gotten a victory. They don't. And then last night, or I guess yesterday afternoon, same thing, a 0-0 draw where there's some lethargy. There's very little sustained pressure. There's very little ability to sort of dominate games like this team feels like it should be capable of. And so I guess my question is, what is this team in terms of talent? Is it a team that should go into every game dominate with an occasional bad performance that sort of they let off the gas? Or is this a team that maybe we should think of more as we got to get the tactics right, we got to get the personnel right, we got to line things up if we want to win game after game after game after game?
I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest. I feel as they are the deepest team, but the only way to see that is to really play your depth players and to really see if they can hold on to a game, to win a game that, the starters don't play, that the regular starters don't play in. And that's what we saw last year when they labeled us the deepest team in the MLS. When Messi was out, Suárez was out for the Copa America, you had players like Matias Rojas step in, Campana stepped in, multiple players in the midfield, the emergence of Yannick Bright throughout the season. So you kind of need that this year. And I still think talent-wise going into every game, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to dominate a team with the correct personnel on the pitch.
So to me then, and I agree with you, like I do think this team has the talent to beat anyone in the MLS and to be favored against anyone in the MLS in any game, in any situation. Like, we're going to go play in Vancouver middle of next week. And I think Inter Miami should go into that game being the favorite to win, not just get a result, not just draw, but to win that game. Because I do believe Inter Miami's talent is that far ahead of everyone else. And yet I'm looking as we go 7 straight wins, 7 wins out of 8 games, including a 1 draw that opened the season with an early red card that we survive and still get a point from. And then the last 3 or 4 games, it feels totally different. It doesn't feel like that same sort of domination like it did for much of the early parts of the season. And so I'm left thinking that the only explanation is that this team has been forced game after game after game, especially the stars of this team, to contribute and to win, and that they're going to break down at some point. It just feels logical. It feels like we are slowly progressing to that point where the performances become lesser and lesser. The results diminish and diminish. And all of a sudden you have a situation where Inter Miami's 4th in the Eastern Conference when they probably should have won the last 2 games, and they probably could have or would have if they rotated a little bit more, if they gave opportunities to guys like Robert Taylor, Ian Frey, Davin Martinez, etc. And I think that's the question I'm going to think about this week, and I'm going to keep with me is this team actually good enough to win and dominate every game? And I still think, as we talk and as we say this right now, they should be. And so it's about the coach getting the personnel right, not just in terms of putting his best 11 on the field, but managing it so that his team, when he puts them out there, is ready and able to perform at the highest level that they're capable of. And I think Suárez and Segovia are the 2 most obvious examples of guys that have been put out too much and their performances are starting to suffer because of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Any final thoughts on this game? Are you ready to get to awards?
I'm ready to get to awards. Not much to talk about in that game, to be honest.
I think that's fair. Sorry for losing there for a second.
All right.
But let's get to awards. On this show, we give out 6 awards, a Heron of the match, a Heron that flew north, and 2 individual awards each. And because I went first last time, I'll let you go first this time. Mark, who is the Heron of the match for this 0-0 draw? And by the way, I do understand the irony of when it's an incredible game, I got to give out the man of the match, and you had to give out the Heron that flew north. And now that it's a terrible game,
I know,
we get the roles reversed. So I appreciate the irony of that, but it doesn't change the fact that you get to go first.
No, thank you. The Heron of the match for me for this game was Oscar Ustari. Made some good saves throughout that game. One stood out in particular. He had a diving save that he actually caught and didn't parry it out.
Yeah, 47th minute on Zinkernagel. Philip Zinkernagel drives into the box and puts a nice shot towards that top left corner, and he was able to not just make the save but catch it. And I thought that was very important in that moment because he wasn't able to, or I'm sorry, there was Chicago Fire players coming in as Mark tries to figure out his internet. We will continue with Ustari, who I think was the clear man of the match in this game, Heron in the match, I guess. Multiple saves. I think he finished with 7. But in the final 5 minutes of the game, again, he was electric in terms of doing what he needed to do. Mark mentioned that 47th minute save on a Zinkernagel's shot. But beyond that, in the last couple minutes, he really provided what this team needed. 88th minute, there was a shot by Mo Bamba rejected. And then it kind of bounces to Haile Selassie, who puts it wide. The 90th minute, Joe Bamba again gets an opportunity in a one-on-one with Ustari. Yannick Bright does come in to sort of influence the shot, but he's ultimately he puts the shot on goal, and Ustari does have to make the save. I'd also like to mention there was a really nice play from Ustari early in the game, right before halftime, in stoppage time of the first half, where he puts the ball forward. He gets an offensive, he transitions the team into offense. Noah Allen running down that left side. He collects the ball and then puts a touch into Suárez. And that was a very frustrating moment right before the end of the first half where Suárez takes one touch and then skies it. That was pretty disappointing. So I agree. I think Ustari, obvious man of the match, hit another moment in the 26th minute where he had a nice save. And so for me, clear man of the match. And I think that was a good one, Mark. Okay, we lost Mark again. So I will just fast forward, and we'll come back to this one, I guess, to the Heron that flew north. And for those that aren't familiar with this award, it is the award we give to the player who is doing the wrong thing. Florida Herons do not fly anywhere for the winter. Instead, they stay right where they are. So if you catch one flying north for the winter, you caught them doing the wrong thing. And for me, the answer has to be Telasco Segovia. I thought he was poor in this game. I've mentioned it a number of times over the course of this podcast, but he has lost that sort of oomph that I thought he brought to the team early in the season. I thought he was really, really impressive early on. And since then, I think it's been a dramatic drop-off from him. I thought he was good against Toronto and LA, but I think for the past month, aside from those two games, it's been pretty disappointing from Segovia. Mark, we'll go back to Oscar Ustari in a second, but talk to me about what you thought of Telasco Segovia.
I think it's a product of those tired legs and not him being able to find his rhythm on that left side. Really hasn't been showing any creative juices ever since that first LAFC game. Really has struggled, I want to say, the last 3 MLS season games. The footing isn't there. He's a step behind. Really struggled in getting into wide spaces or to get the ball and to play into Messi. So this plays into what we spoke about earlier, him needing a rest and a reset. And I think it will do him justice getting that rest. And as you said, he disappears in some matches. In some matches, he's great. He's playing. It's here or there.
I would like to see him move around the field a little bit more. Yeah. To me, he has the talent, the quality to be a little bit more of an impact player if he can get on the ball more. And I do think, depending on what the defense is doing, he disappears. He just disappears. And so in that case, he doesn't really impact the team defensively. He's not a positive defensive player. And so he becomes sort of a wasted man out there. And so if you put him into the midfield, he has to be more a part of the action. I'd like to see him be tried next to a Yannick Bright or next to a Sergio Busquets to see what he can bring in that role. I'd also like to see him on the right because we leave so much space out there. I think if you put him out there, he'll find the space and he will get open and he'll have the quality on the ball to potentially create, especially if you put on the left side a runner, either Jordi Alba or a Fafa Picault or Tadeo Allende on the left side making runs in behind. I think he could be the guy that finds them. So I'm not down on Telasco Segovia as a player, but I don't think – I think we're learning that he's not a big defensive presence. I think we're learning that if he doesn't get on the ball, he's not particularly impactful. And so if those are going to be hallmarks of his game – and Javier Mascherano decides this is one of my best players, I got to find a place for him, I think we need to do a little bit more experimenting of where he can best impact this team.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, let's go back to the Heron in the match because you disappeared for a minute and we carried on, but I kind of ran out of things to say about Ustari, who I thought was excellent. Talk to me about why you gave him the man of the match.
The tendencies that I saw in Ustari, and specifically the shot-stopping ability, were the same tendencies we saw in Drake Callender. To have a real shot stopper and to have the ability to be confident back there, and he stood up 2 one-on-ones in back-to-back games with guys who are clinical finishers. Says a lot, and the confidence that should be bestowed on that back line, knowing they have a stalwart back there and a steel curtain to say, and he's just made play after play after play for us to keep us in games, start transition, offensive transition going the other way, distributing the ball. So he's had a tremendous last 2 games.
Yeah. And again, we talked about it against LAFC. I didn't think he had a perfect game, but he was huge in the biggest moments. And I actually thought he was tremendous in this game. I thought it was his best game at Inter Miami. I thought, and I mentioned this when you were gone, but he had that one ball in distribution at the end of the first half that was potentially the best I've seen from any goalkeeper at Inter Miami ever. And Noah Allen, and then he puts it into Suárez, and Suárez sort of hits it high. That was phenomenal. And then, as we mentioned, plenty of saves. As you were mentioning, as you disappeared, Philip Zinkernagel had an opportunity, and he not only saves it, but he catches it. There were some Chicago Fire players sort of rushing the box for a rebound. So it was important not just that he saved it, but he would have had to parry it out wide for a corner if he doesn't make that catch. Instead, he just makes the catch, and Inter Miami is fine, ready to go. And so that's the type of play. It feels small. It doesn't show up on the score sheet, but it's the type of play that gets you the Heron of the match at the Dry Pink Dialogue.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we will skip over Heron that flew north because no one likes to talk about that type of thing. We already mentioned it. So we will go straight to the first individual award. Mark, what you got for me?
Yeah, I'm going to give you the one-man band award.
Okay, the one-man band award. I feel like this is sort of an oxymoron, a one-man band. You can't be a band if you're one man. But maybe you're so good you play multiple instruments, and that sounds like the type of thing Lionel Messi would do because he's so talented. He can distribute, he can score, he can shoot, he can take set pieces, he can take corners. And we even saw him with little pressing and a little bit of defensive work this game. Lionel Messi gets the one-man band award.
You're good at this, man. I'm going to need to do something about these, but, second time, yeah, you're right on that. Lionel Messi gets the one-man band award. I mean, in a game where we were stuck in the mud, really couldn't get anything going, the chances that were of danger came from the left foot of Lionel Messi. A free kick that Chris Brady saves off the crossbar. Another one from the right side that hits the post as he's going for the direct shot. And there's a 4 to 5 minute span there where he's playing long ball after long ball to Alba or to Allende. And you're like, this guy just picks up the ball at half field, takes one look up, and he's trying to provide serve, and he's providing service. And we need to help him out. He can't pass the ball from midfield, run onto it, and finish from right there. He's had his good runs, the cutback with Alba and stuff like that. But when he's distributing from midfield, you need some other guys to get on the end of the ball and finish it for him.
I'm glad you gave him an award because I think it's so easy for us on this show to give him the man of the match if he's the best player. And I think there was a small shout for him in this game because I did think he did a lot. I think Oscar Ustari the obvious choice, though. But if he doesn't win the man of the match, it's sort of easy to ignore him for the rest of the awards because he's so good, so consistently that it's almost not an interesting topic. But I think in this game it was, and I would have also given him an award if you hadn't, not to banter, but I do think my award was a little bit better. It's neither here nor there. Here's the thing about Messi. He's so good that he can win you games. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do everything in your power to empower and employ the best tactics that get the best out of him. And so I'm looking around at this game and I'm thinking, we didn't do a lot to spread the back line out. We didn't do a lot to create high turnovers. We didn't do a ton to make sure the defense was leaving holes open for Lionel Messi. Ultimately, we didn't do a ton to actually help Messi be the difference maker that he can be. And in this game, he ends up not being the guy that gets the game-winning goal. Now, he had some incredibly close moments. One that I didn't even really realize was quite so tough. On the first time I watched it was the 86th-minute free kick. He kind of goes, wins the ball in the corner. Carlos Heron pulls his shirt back. And so there's a free kick from not the corner, but sort of the side of the field. And he puts a shot on goal and it hits the far post and bounces out. And on rewatch, I was thinking, he almost just won the game if it was 4 inches to the right. And so again, he was phenomenal. Had a couple of free kick opportunities, especially that first one where he almost puts in the back of the net. But it just, he did what he does normally. And so I don't even feel like we need to go into that too much. But it's the rest of the team around him that I think Javier Mascherano needs to focus on supporting him. I thought it was a hugely bold and ambitious move to put him at the number 10 in this system compared to what we had done with Tata Martino for the previous year and a half. And the whole point of that was trying to build this team to maximize what Lionel Messi is. And I think we've done a good job of that. But in this game, I think we failed. I think Javier Mascherano needs to look at that and say, I need to put more pressers, more runners, more skilled players around so that whether it's guys running over the top and we're going to play that way, or it's guys that have some skill that can pull out that back line and create some space for Messi, and we're going to play that way, or whether it's going to be, I'm going to create some really high press opportunities with a striker that's going to press, and Fafa and Benheim, we're going to create high turnovers and just get Messi on the ball really quickly against a disorganized defense. Whatever it is, we need to put a personnel that's going to, for that specific game plan against that specific team, maximize who and what Messi is. And I didn't think we did a good job of that today. I don't think we've done a tremendous job of it of late. And I would like to see that become, once again, the primary focus. I get people are going to complain that we play too much through Messi or we put the ball on Messi's feet too much. But the truth is, he is the best player in the world. And that's exactly what every team in the MLS would do. Not just with Messi, but with whoever their superstar is. Put the game on their shoulders. But let's find a way to support him so he can carry the most load with the most sturdy backpack, so to speak.
Yeah, agreed.
Mistiano says, that one to Allende, goddamn. At the 90th minute, we didn't even mention it, there's a moment, 30-second moment where they, and by they I mean Chicago, gets a transition opportunity, and Joe Bamba gets an opportunity beyond the defense. Yannick Bright is desperately trying to catch up to him. He does sort of get a shoulder to him, but it's as the shot's coming off, and Ustari makes a save and then gets it to Messi, and Messi puts an incredible ball over the top to Tadeo Allende, who obviously pulls it wide, and Inter Miami doesn't get the game winner. But that moment felt like, man, even after 90 minutes of not doing much, Messi can still put that one ball in to help you win the game. So I just think Inter Miami needs to support him. By the way, I should add, because we didn't really talk about it earlier, when Jordi Alba and Tadeo Allende came onto the field, I thought things massively improved for the offense. I guess this is my fault for not bringing it up earlier, but the subs come in the 60th minute, 59th minute. Jordi Alba creates tremendous width on that left side. Tadeo Allende giving you an incredibly new and important threat on the right side. You take Segovia off because he wasn't providing much, and all of a sudden you have width, you have verticality. It is a much more stretched out defense, and then not just those players being impactful, but it allows Messi to have a bigger impact. And so we saw in the final 30 minutes, he was 3, 4, 5 opportunities came either from his left foot or from a ball he put in. Yeah. So great game from Messi. Not quite at what Ustari did, but still a phenomenal performance from the GOAT. And I just want to see us maximize what he can be a little bit more. Okay, my first award. Let me see what I put for my awards. Which one do I want to give first? I was going to give the gold bars for a superstar award to Messi, for what it's worth. I'm going to give the Hype and the Heron award.
The Hype and the Heron award. The Hype and the Heron award. I don't know why I'm thinking Falcone for this one, but you gave it to him last week with one. The Hype and the Heron award. I'm going to go out and say Maxi Falcone. You're going to give him back-to-back awards?
Why do you say Maxi Falcone?
He's lived up to the hype that he was brought in to be. This stalwart center back, the rock back there, and has really shown that to start the season.
Totally wrong.
Yeah,
and I want you to think about the award and try again, because I'm not saying it's the hype becomes the Heron. It's the hype and the Heron. It's two separate things. So I will give you that hint and then let you try again.
Man, I am just Noah Allen. You gave one last week. Yannick Bright. I'm thinking Redondo. I know how much you love Noah Allen. Is this Noah Allen?
This award goes to Gonzalo Lujan, because
really?
All of the players that we brought in this winter window, there was a certain amount of hype about them. And I think most of them have totally justified it. But that's different. the player that you are hyped up to be and the actual Heron that plays for Inter Miami, these are two different things. And it has to, in the eyes of the fans, transition quick, and the coaches, transition quickly from the hype, the player you think you're getting, to the player you have. And you have to make adjustments accordingly. Gonzalo Lujan has not been the player that we thought he was going to be. And that's fine. You don't have to be. I have said this multiple times now. He is Sergei Kristov to me, which is fine. Sergei Kristov is a professional soccer player that fits certain systems really well. He's calm on the ball. He's composed. He's good in the box. Like, he has real qualities to him. And I think the same is true about Gonzalo Lujan. But the one thing you would never do with Sergei Kristov is put him at right back and make him play against tricky, pacey, athletic wingers and expect him to do a good job there. And so I wasn't going to give Gonzalo Lujan the Heron that flew north because I don't think it's his fault. He is being played out of position in space against players that he's not able to handle. And so even if the hype of what he was thought that he could be a right back and be good, the Heron that he isn't ready to do that. And so whatever it is, whether it's Cello or Ian Frey, like, those two are your right backs. Gonzalo Lujan is a backup center back, and I think that's where he needs to be moving forward. I don't want to keep giving awards to him like this, but Javier Mascherano is forcing me by continuing to play him in a position where he's going to get exposed. He had a moment, I think in the 12th minute, 13th minute, where he gets forward for the only time all game, and he kicks it straight to Chris Brady, the goalkeeper for Chicago. He clearly doesn't have much of a forward game. He clearly is not athletic enough to play in space. These two things are so obvious to me. And so he has qualities. He's not a terrible player. He's not a guy that doesn't belong on a professional role. He's not any of those things. But what he's also not is a right back. He needs to be playing as a center back where you have players alongside him and let him use his calmness on the ball, his composure in possession, his ability to be in the right space, his ability to sort of stick a foot out and dislodge someone from the ball. Like, those things that he's good at, let him be that player, the Heron that he actually is, and stop trying to make him the hype that you thought he was when he was coming in.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I really, from my personal opinion, I didn't see the hype around Lujan. Maybe that's why I didn't even think of him in the first place. I was even thinking Redondo for this. The hype that he was brought in, and that's where I was kind of playing that. I don't know why I said Noah Allen, but I was kind of playing that Redondo. I was on the right track, just didn't say the right name. But Lujan, as you said, doesn't have the abilities to play as a right back. As you said, can't play against pacey strikers, pacey wingers. He's a Sergei Kristov in the respect that you said it in. I don't think I ever saw the hype to start with him in any format. And that's not saying he was a bad player before, but you're right, he hasn't lived up to what this team expected him to be or what we expected him to be. And that's not his fault. He's being played out of the position that's a disadvantage for him.
Yeah, so I would like to see him play either as a right-sided center back. Nope, that's it. I'd like to see him as a right-sided center back as a backup to Toto Aviles, really. And he'll get opportunities through the course of the season. I'm not against him playing. I just think you have to protect him a little bit, especially as he's developing and coming into a new league and trying to figure out how he fits into this team. But you're exposing him in a way you don't have to. This isn't last year where you didn't have a second right back, right? For so much of the season, it was Cello or it was David Ruiz, right? And so it's not that type of situation. You have two healthy center right backs right now. Even going back a couple of weeks to that Charlotte game where Ian Frey needed a break, that's fine. He can play there, I guess, on an emergency basis. But when you have two healthy right backs on your bench and you have a bunch of healthy, talented offensive players like Gressel, like Robert Taylor, like Leo Alfonso, who didn't even make the trip, there's no reason that Gonzalo Lujan should be starting at right back. I appreciate the idea. I appreciate that it could have been a nice thing. But here we are, and the Heron he is right now is not that guy. Start Ian Frey. It's not that hard.
It's that simple, I think.
Okay. Your turn.
My second award, I'm going to give the You're Killing Me Smalls award.
The You're Killing Me Smalls award. Okay. The You're Killing Me Smalls award is a negative award. And it's going to a player that you feel like was really frustrating you in this game. Not necessarily a small person, because that would be too easy. So I'm going to guess Luis Suárez because he was disappointing you. You feel like he deserves a negative award, and he hasn't gotten one yet. Luis Suárez.
Yeah, you are 2 for 2. You're batting 1,000 right now. This is a term from The Sandlot. It's when someone is frustrating you, you're killing me, Smalls, and you didn't do the right thing at the right moment there. And that's where I turn to Luis Suárez, and he's had multiple instances this season where I just say to my head, "You're killing me, Smalls." He has that. He's been woeful in the final third. I believe he hasn't scored from the run of play in 8 games.
Yep.
So he had I think, a good opportunity this one. He receives the ball from Sergio Busquets, or from Messi, who's played in by Busquets, takes a touch, turns his back to the goal, and tries to replay it to Messi cutting across the box instead of just taking one touch, turning and trying to rifle into the corner as he's done in the past. So it's just those lapses of, what did he think there? His passing in the final third hasn't been the best, so that's why he gets this award.
No, I was considering giving him the award for the Heron that flew north, although I think it's more subtle with Velasco Segovia, and that's why I wanted to really bring it up and dive into it, because I do think he's had some moments where he disappears, and so I think he was deserving of the Heron that flew north. But Luis Suárez is right there. How do I say this? Obviously, Marc, you're a guest here, but Soren and I go back and forth on Luis Suárez, and I am consistently defending Luis Suárez, consistently saying he's going to come good, consistently defending that it's hard to really appreciate what he does on the pitch when he runs like he does, and it's easy to forget that he does all these little things so well, and ultimately he's such a clinical finisher that even though he doesn't get quite the same quality of opportunities and he can't quite get to those balls over the top, he's still so proficient in the final third that it's worth it. It's fine. It's good. He's a great player and was one of the best players in the league last year. He's been poor lately. The last 4 or 5 games, he maybe have had one, solid performance. Almost gets a goal in this game. He gets caught off in the 86th minute because he was offsides. But overall, it's been disappointing from Luis Suárez. I still think he's going to come good. I still think he's going to be fine. I still think we're going to be looking at him as a striker that scored 18 goals this year at the end of the season, and that's a tremendous value for a TAM striker. But I want to get the best out of him. I want to see what he was like last season and even to start this season. And that's the thing. I know I believe it's not an age thing because he started the season on fire. A couple of assists and goals in the first couple games of the season. He was exactly what we thought he was going to be, and people were talking about how he's going to win the MVP this year in the MLS. And then this 8-game stretch, 8+ game stretch where his only goal is from a penalty, hasn't been particularly effective, is not creating for others in the same way. And then I think that 68th minute moment that you mentioned where it's a quick turnover, Busquets wins the ball, goes to Messi quickly. Messi finds Suárez, and all Suárez has to do is turn, fire it into the corner. Inter Miami's up 1-0. And instead of doing that, he sort of doesn't turn. He just waits for Messi to sort of make a move. He passes to Messi, but Messi's running into 2 guys. And even though he had clearly the better opportunity, he let Messi go with it. And you're Luis Suárez, dude. You don't have to do that. So I want to see your confidence back. And I think the first step to that is getting some time off and just getting a refresh on your mentality, getting a refresh on what you expect out of this game. So good award. I'm desperate to see him get 60 minutes on the bench and come off and hopefully save a game next week, win the game against Columbus. But he needs a break to me, honestly. And you went and got this 18-year-old kid. Let's go see what he's got.
Look, I'm all for it.
Misiano says that moment felt like Suárez lost his confidence with his finishing and passed the responsibility onto Messi. And I think that is perfectly worded because I think that's exactly what I thought. Anything else on Suárez?
No, I just think a good rest for him might do a good reset in terms of finding his confidence, his positivity within the team. Because we know he's a prolific goal scorer. When one falls, I'm sure the floodgates will open, but he needs to be able to work those, work through those humps and speed bumps to get back to where he was last season.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, my last and final award is the Mixtape CdV.
Mixtape CdV.
Mm-hmm.
Holy moly. Mixtape CdV. Something with music. Mixtape CdV. Oh, I'm thinking of two players. Thinking of Aviles. Thinking of Sergio Busquets. Mixtape CdV. Man, I don't know why something's telling me just go for Aviles. I'm gonna say Aviles.
It's not obvious. Here's my connection. There were two players on the field last night who were teammates last year for a club in Spain called Celta de Vigo.
Okay.
CDV. Jonathan Bamba was the big transfer for the Chicago Fire. He's a DP player for them. Big time acquisition for Chicago. And I thought he played fine. I thought he created opportunities for himself. You could see the pace and transition is really impressive. He's not a finisher in that sort of classic going to finish everything style. And so we saw he couldn't put the ball in the corners like some other strikers or wingers can. It's not really his game. He's trying to create more for Hugo Kuipers, who also was strangely missing from this game. It's neither here nor there. But you know who I thought was just as impactful when he came on?
Tadeo Allende.
His former teammate, Tadeo Allende, who was the perfect mixtape, CdV, Celta de Vigo. Man, Sora's going to love these awards. Sorry. He was the perfect antidote to everything that was going wrong for Inter Miami over the course of the first 60 minutes. He comes in, he immediately provides a spark. His first touch on the ball is to dribble through the defense, and then he drops it off for Messi. Messi then gets fouled, and that's that first free kick opportunity for Messi that he puts off the crossbar, off the fingertips of Chris Brady. It becomes a corner, and it's a spectacular start. I thought he completely opened up our offense. We've been missing him for quite some time now. He wasn't particularly impactful against LAFC, which is fine because the team did what they needed to do to get the win. But he is such a physical specimen, and to have our own guy like that we didn't have to go make a DP, that we didn't have to make this huge acquisition, but can still be a part of our team and a hugely impactful part of our team from the same offshoot of Celta de Vigo trying to move players on. They're resetting their whole organization. Look at De La Torre for San Diego, another player in that mold. For Inter Miami to be the one to get him on loan and to not be a huge piece of the salary budget and all that stuff, but to be, I think, almost equally as impactful is a huge coup. I'm really excited about this player. I know he misses the game-winning opportunity, but can you imagine what we'd be saying about him right now if he had made that? I really think highly of Tadeo Allende. He's a stud, and I wanted to give him an award.
Rightfully so. You had me in a mixtape with that award. I had no idea where you were going with that. Because when I associate Jonathan Bamba, and I follow world football a lot, I associate him with Leo. I totally forgot right over my mind he played 2 years at Celta de Vigo. But Tadeo Allende really, since the start of this season, is in comparison, a physical specimen like Campana was. He gives you better play on the wing, just as good in the air, I would say, because he wins a lot of balls from Ustari to flick onto Suárez, flick onto Messi, has the dribbling ability of Robert Taylor, in the terms of the quickness, can finish with the best of them, has a thunderous goal against Houston. If he would have finished that goal, I think we may be talking Heron of the match for this one. But like you said, for Inter Miami to acquire this type of player for what, in comparison to what Jonathan Bamba was acquired for and the output that what he's produced this season, it's just a credit to the scouting department that we have at Inter Miami right now.
Yeah, and the pull that we have because we have, the Messi and Busquets and Alba and Suarez. They are such a huge draw. I'm very curious to see what Tadeo Allende's future looks like. I think it's going to be hard for him to stay at Miami beyond this year because he's going to have suitors and the salary and transfer fees not really going to fit into what Inter Miami has available to them because of the salary rules. But I think Inter Miami's going to really enjoy this player. I think they're probably going to try really hard to get him on loan again or see what there's some work that can be done with the transfer fee because he's a stud. I hope he has a huge future, and I think he's going to have a huge year. He could be the guy that we're talking about as the key difference maker. I think so far this season, and we did our draft of the top Herons, me and Sora did, and I think we put Yannick Bright 5. But when we're talking about Yannick Bright, Noah Allen, Maxi Falcone, Telasco Segovias, who is that best of the rest player beyond the big four? In this very moment, I'm feeling really good about Tadeo Allende potentially being that guy by the end of the season. He's a special player, and I love watching him. Okay, anyone else that you wanted to talk about in this game? Because I think there was a couple other players that I thought were worth talking about. Toto Aviles, he gets pulled early. I think more as a sacrifice for reshaping the team and getting Jordi Alba on. But I thought he had some really nice moments in one-on-one defense and especially in transition. I think that's where he's really shown he's the best center back on this roster. He's so athletic. He's big. He is smart in terms of knowing when to make that one final move to cause a deflection or to force his defender wide. He's really good in defensive transition, and that's a nice weapon to have. And now that he's the number 3 center back, I think he's going to be allowed to mature in a way that I think is going to be really good for him instead of having that game-to-game pressure. So I'm a huge fan of Toto Aviles, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. An aspect of his game that's very, brushed under the rug might be his ability to play the ball long and to switch the play to Allen or to Alba or down the right side to Allende. He gives you that, if a team's going to press you, he has the ability to play that ball wide, to play it deep, and to play it long and give us transition opportunities. And that's just another factor that makes him such a good center back for us. And like you said, that one-on-one defending.
So sorry.
Yeah, he's been very good at that one-on-one defending in transition, and it's complemented well when you have Maxi Falcone and him at the same time with Noah Allen as well. That rotation of 3, you have a really, really solid core in that center back room.
Isn't it great? Isn't it awesome? We are like 2 years ago, we were starting Kamal Miller and Sergei Kristoff, and Chris McVeigh was our rotational center back.
He was starting at left back.
Well, not okay. 2 years ago, he was
he was
center back.
Third,
but you're right.
Yeah.
3 years ago, he was our starting left back. So it just feels great to be in this situation. Although hands off to Chris McVeigh, who has once again earned himself a starting role in the MLS with San Diego. Redondo, I thought was solid. People were giving him some slack after the game. I thought he was fine. For what we know Redondo to be, I think he had a very solid game. And if he plays like this, much like Toto Aviles, I think, where he's not one of your best 2, right? I think it's clear Busquets and Yannick Bright are your top 2, especially in the big moments. But when you want to rotate through and get guys a little bit of rest, I think Redondo the last couple of games has been a very solid option. And if that's how he sort of develops into the next phase of his career, I think that's great. Kramaski, I thought got a lot of slack last night, and I thought he was good for what what you're expecting from him.
Yeah, touching on Redondo, I believe when paired with when people look at him, they're comparing him to Yannick Bright, and Yannick Bright's a consistent six. Redondo, as we've spoken about, or as you, I don't know, I still don't know what he is in what terms of a deep lying playmaker, a true eight. And the coaching staff puts him in next to Busquets, expecting him to cover spaces that Yannick Breg does, and that's kind of the same thing that we're asking of Lujan on as playing a right back. He's not suited to play as a six, but he's held his own the last two games and has had some fair showings, has some solid performances, has played the most balls into the final third out of anyone the last two games for Inter Miami. He gets forward, he finds the players that need to be found. It's up to them to finish.
Yeah, we're gonna have another episode tomorrow with I have another guest coming on about the transfer window. We're gonna get more into Redondo and some of these other transactions that Inter Miami has done. So I'll save that for tomorrow's episode. But Cremaschi, I also thought Cremaschi was good. Like, you don't expect Cremaschi to be the goal threat, and so when you put him out there, if you have those standards for him, you're going to be disappointed. But aside, if you can understand what style of player Cremaschi is, I thought he played really well, and I thought he would have been tremendously aided by an Ian Frey making overlapping runs on the other side. He had a couple nice crosses. He had one early. I actually have the minute if you'll give me a second to find it. 8th minute, he had a beautiful cross to Redondo, who was making a run out of the midfield, and Redondo sort of heads it to Suárez. And the defender, Suárez has to take a certain angle so that he can catch up to it. The defender's able to cut it off. But that play would have been really nice if Suárez was a step earlier, and it all started with Cremaschi with a phenomenal cross. So I thought he put in a really good performance, and it's just the system that they employed yesterday wasn't good
suited
enough,
he's going to give you the defensive track back. He's going to be solid in the press, find the ball here and there. But as I keep looking at his game and analyzing the way he plays, he's not going to give you what Allende gives you as a wing play, as a winger. So to us to look at him in that same aspect is unfair to him. He's a central player, central midfielder who's going to disrupt the run of play for the other team, win the ball, take on a defender, and find another player to create the chances. So I think he had a fair game. Nothing out of this world. Nothing. I think fair is the right assessment.
Yeah. A couple other players we didn't give an award to: Aviles, Falcone, and Noah Allen. Those three, I think if you put Ian Frey or Cheluigi in a right back, and that's sort of your rotated back line, that's an incredible rotated back line. I thought they all played really well. Noah Allen, we saw some of the things that he does as a left winger. It's unfortunate that, again, I don't think this team really, that in terms of the personnel last night, really supported much from him on the left side. But there was a couple moments, including that Oscar Ustari pass to him that he put into Suárez late in the first half. So in another day, Noah Allen gets an assist, and we're really talking about him being a key contributor to a victory. And then Falcone and Aviles we talked about. So I thought there was a lot of really solid performances, and we made sure to touch on this earlier in the podcast where the back line played well. The goalkeeper played well. I thought the midfield played pretty well. It was really the front four that it was a mismatch of what the game plan was versus the personnel we actually put out there. And that to me is the ultimate diagnosis from why this game didn't go the way we wanted to.
No, yeah, it's what I saw. I mean, I just want to touch on something that caught my eye. It probably caught your eye too. The amount of times that Falcone just finds himself in the right spot to block a shot. It's like that skill is incredible. He, like the one against LAFC. He had one against Sporting KC, I believe, in the first round of the CCC. He had one against Kuipers yesterday. He had another one from, I can't remember, maybe Brian Gutierrez shot it. He finds himself in the right spot and just says, no, you're not going to even get the shot even remotely close to the goal.
Yeah,
it's a skill.
His long pace is not impressive, but almost everything else about him is. Like, he's a stud. And listen, here's the other thing. Every time he has a good game and I come on here and I start talking about, oh, he was so good at this and this and this, someone in the chat who's watched him play much more says, we haven't even seen him reach his potential yet. So I'm excited to see what that could possibly be. Final thoughts on this game, and then maybe we can look ahead. for the next couple of games. But final thoughts.
Yeah, just a really dull game from the offensive standpoint. I think that's what it all revolves around. What we spoke about early in the podcast, what you just touched upon. If we want to have a creative offensive flow to the game, we need the right personnel on the pitch to make that happen. It can't just be Messi creating. He can do it, but there needs to be an end product to it, and it can't always be him. If he's providing the service, we need someone to get on the end of the ball. And in this game, it wasn't there. There was no creativity through any runs being made up until Allende came on. He brought the width, and Alba brought width on the left side. So getting that personnel for the style of play that we want to play against certain teams that sit in a low block like Chicago or LAFC in that first leg, it's needed for this team to go forward and to win every game and to dominate as we expect them to.
Yeah, let's get to the chat because there was a couple questions I starred along the way, and I apologize for not getting to them sooner. But Miami King asked, do you think Toto can play right back? I would be way more in favor of seeing Toto at right back than Gonzalo Lujan at this point.
I think he's played it a handful of times under Tata Martino last year. I said Toto, Tata, but I think he's played it a handful of times. He's got the pace. He's got the athleticism. He has the quality on the ball to play balls from wide spaces. So I would much rather see him than Gonzalo Lujan struggle against athletic wingers and put Toto out there who can probably hold his own.
Yeah, and listen, I think Ian Frey does that just as well as Toto. So there's no need. Just throw Ian Frey out there.
You have Ian Frey who's younger, who carries the ball better, and he's overall a better right back.
And he's got the same sort of long speed that Toto has, and I just am very disappointed that we haven't seen him lately. Wookie said way early in the podcast, so I apologize for not getting to this earlier. Question: if the young players are told to pass it to Messi, or if they defer to him because they don't dare take initiative, and then Cynical Tube followed that up by saying, "Is it just me, or does it seem that everyone is scared to not give the ball to Messi on the attack? Do you think they're told that they're not allowed to take the ball on their own?" Here's my response to that. Is that ultimately I feel like you see this every single time they try and take initiative and it doesn't work. They get yelled at by Suárez and by Messi. And so I do think that comes into their psyche. I also think there is this sense that as the game goes along and they haven't broken through and things aren't going quite right, they defer to Messi because they know, A, he's willing to take it on, because of course he is. But B, there's like a little bit of a nervousness coming in, like let's let Messi make the breakthrough. And then because what we're doing isn't quite working. So I do think there is a psychological aspect to this. I do think that's something that Inter Miami has to work through. I thought they did a tremendous job in the middle of last year, proving to themselves when Messi was gone that they can win. And I thought that carried over for much of the season. But I do think over the last couple of games, we have struggled for the first time this season. And it is not surprising that the result of that is a little bit more of a deferment to Messi.
Yeah. You can see it when they do mess up. Suárez might be the first one to have his arms in the air. But at the same time, when Suárez messes up, no one really says anything because it's that, you're deferring to those two guys to really make a play. And as the game gets longer and it drags on, these games that are tied, some of these guys, will often defer to Messi because he will make a play. He's done it before. And at the same time, they're like, oh, if I play him, make the right run, he's going to play me back, and we have a chance to score.
Yeah, totally. One last comment, and then we'll wrap it up. On East Review says, this channel is all about making negative comments on the team when they lose or tie at your comfort zone. Don't forget the players playing 90-plus minutes. Here's what I just want to respond to this by saying there's no wrong way to be a fan. And so however you want to experience this team or your team, whether it's overwhelming positivity, whether it's overwhelming negativity, I think all of those things are understandable. And we genuinely just want to be a place where we talk about the Herons. We want to talk about it with you guys. So I appreciate you getting into the chat and saying that. That's totally fine. It doesn't hurt our feelings. We just want to talk about how we see it, and we want to interact with you guys. So thank you for the comment. But keep it coming, and I hope you come to the next game where we have a great game and all we are is all smiles. But Other than that, guys, I think that's it for today. Marc, thank you so much for being here. Again, I really appreciate it. Please tell everyone where they can find more of you.
You can find me on the Kendall Sports Network on YouTube live every Wednesday at 7:30 on the False Nine podcast, talking all things Inter Miami. Catch me there this Wednesday.
All right, guys, Marc will be back probably after the next game as well, so you guys can see more of him then. But again, if you want to catch more of him, check it out. I will put the link in the description of this episode as soon as we end this live segment. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we're probably going to be back tomorrow. I'll have a different guest on, and we're going to talk about the transfer window and what Inter Miami was able to accomplish this winter, have a little bit of a more nuanced conversation, not just about a game, but bigger picture. And so I'm excited for that. I hope you join us tomorrow night. But until then, guys, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a wonderful night. We will see you guys tomorrow. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.